All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the RSG One Mic. We have the boxing conversations with Darnell and Devon today. And last Saturday, we saw Tank, and he broke something on that boy. He broke something on that boy. But before we get into it, we want to remind you guys to head over to realsportsguys.com. Check us out. We have all of our social media information and stuff like that on there. And be sure to also catch us on blogtalk.com if that will suit you a little better. But without further ado, we will go in to the boxing conversations that we have today. Gervonta Davis, he had an explosive and a very short night against Hugo Ruiz. I almost said Miguel Ruiz. I don't know who that is. I'm making up people. But what did you think about this, man?
Well, I know pre-fight, we were talking about, the fact that he, had missed weight in his first attempt and came back, and there was, you and I were talking about speculation, like, is he really ready or is he outgrown this? And there's a lot of talk around that. Floyd was really clear about what he thought about him and where his place was going to be in the game. And the killer was he came out to the Michael Jackson, was it the Thriller stuff, in the suit. And that was kind of crazy because it was like a major production, but you're trying to figure out, was that something that fit him? You could see Roy Jones doing it. And at times it kind of looked like he was just kind of smiling, kind of uncomfortable. But when he got in the ring, you could tell he was all business. And he's like my Russell Westbrook of boxing. He comes at you with everything with bad intentions. And that showed in that fight, man. It was just, I think it was an amazing display. And, he's quickly putting himself in position for some huge pay-per-view fights. As Floyd said, they're asking about all the fighters. He's like, we're working him up to 6-figure, 7-figure, and 8-figure checks. Like, that's the kind of person you want to be with, who is positioning you with that kind of stuff. And he is totally locked in this partnership with Floyd, where people were, thinking there was some friction between the two of them. It feels like they are step by step in line with each other.
Yep, and from the very beginning of the fight, in the first minute of the fight, he landed 4 straight left hands, just pow, 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 pow. And then Ruiz walked away. He tried to back up, and all of a sudden you see blood coming down his nose. And then after that, he's tried to put the pressure on Davis, but Davis was quick. He's in and out. And after that, he hit one good combination towards the end of the round, and it was over.
Yeah,
he broke.
He's showing you everything that you want at this stage. And as we were talking about how you build young fighters too fast, it's clear that they're bringing him along the right way.
And the funny thing that happened, we see a lot of guys talking about other names in the 130 division. One of them being Alberto Machado. You see, just like Keith Thurman is the WBA super champion at welterweight, and Manny Pacquiao is the regular champion for the WBA. It's the same situation at 130. Tank is the super champion, and Alberto Machado is the regular champion. And a lot of guys are saying, well, maybe I think Machado could beat Tank. A lot of people are saying Machado will give him a lot of problems. One guy in particular, he'll remain nameless. He said that the fight taking place last week or this week is a sham because he is not fighting Alberto Machado, and they fight on the same night. And Alberto Machado gets knocked out viciously by this guy that has a full-time job moving up from 126. It was poetic justice. It was something else to see. I didn't even watch it. I didn't even know who was fighting that night. I went on Facebook and somebody was talking about Machado. No, I brought up Machado. That's what I did. Right. I said, since Tank said he wanted 3 fights this year, I said, okay, he should fight Machado, he should fight Burchelt, and then he should fight Tevin Farmer, and then he should move up next year and then fight Lomachenko. But this guy was like, Machado lost. I'm like, Machado lost to who? And I looked up what happened. Every time this boy got hit, he was just like, ooh, ooh. He got hit in the body. He said, ooh. Oh, it was something else. Something else, man. But let's talk about
justice.
Let's talk about Tank's next move. What is Tank gonna do next? Okay, we saw this in the post-fight interview. Floyd Mayweather said something that was very weird and very suspicious. But I'm gonna tell you why it might make a little more sense than it sounds when you first hear it. He said that Gervonta Tank Davis in April will be fighting an exhibition match versus Tenshin Nasukawa. If you remember the name Tenshin Nasukawa, this was the Japanese kickboxer that Floyd Mayweather fought on New Year's Eve in the exhibition match. And of course, an exhibition match is not like a real fight. And Floyd said that Tank will end up having a real fight in May. So this sets up in two different ways. The first way, in my opinion, that as you mentioned earlier in this conversation that Tank he initially missed weight for this fight and had to come back and in a couple of hours and get the weight off. So I believe that this is another way to make sure Tank stays in shape. So you can essentially they don't even have to make this fight at 130. They can make it at 135 or something like that, and essentially make sure Tank is on weight a month before the fight, just to make sure when the fight happens he has no problem making weight. So I think that could be a smart idea. And another thing is May. As I mentioned earlier, May 18th is the date for Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury, the rematch. What if Gervonta Davis ends up on the undercard of that fight? That, as you mentioned earlier, the sixth figure, the second figure, the eighth figure.
Yes,
if
right.
he ends up on that fight, that's a lot of exposure. That's a lot of exposure that can propel him forward. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's it. You know, there's someone, no one knows and understands the marketing and positioning of boxing better than Floyd Mayweather. You know, people can argue a whole bunch of things about Floyd, and we'll talk about some decisions he's made here later in the show. But when inside the sport, in terms of positioning and putting yourself in a position to make the money and get the fights on your terms, nobody's better than Floyd. But you have to create what he understands a demand, and you have to position yourself to do that. And there's no bigger fight, I think, this year than going to be Tyson Fury, that Tyson Fury fight, and Wilder. And so to be able to get the wash from that and use that to propel momentum for another fight in September, coming off of that, that's where you're going to really move into the pay-per-view space in September. So I agree with you. He is beginning to now build his brand, and building his brand, you got to be on. So Floyd knows they're in business, they call this going into velocity. Right. Things start taking off. And this is in boxing's version of he's trying to create that velocity in that moment and leverage the momentum. It's almost like NASCAR when you kind of drafting. They want to draft the Fury Wilder fight into their own type of branding. So you're right on, man. That's going to be Floyd is the master on this.
Okay, so now we've gotten to the fun part of boxing. It's gonna take we're gonna take a little turn and get into some serious things that happened. And we had a conversation yesterday on the full show, the RSG One mic, where we talked about Kareem Hunt and him being signed by the Cleveland Browns. And that conversation, we touched on a very serious note and a very serious subject that seems like it's a recurring theme amongst the sports world. Mm-hmm. And that opens up the opportunity for us to talk today about one Sergey Kovalev that fought last week. Mm-hmm. He fought last week? No, the week before last. He fought the week before we did the show last. So we didn't necessarily touch on this in the last show because I wanted to keep it boxing, but today we gotta dig in on this. So before the fight, right? Before the first fight versus Alvarez, the year before, Sergey Kovalev was charged with felony assault for allegedly punching a woman in the face. But he claims he's not guilty. But here's what we know. The Russian fighter was arrested in Big Bear, California on June 9th after a woman told police that former light heavyweight champion socked her in the face, causing serious injuries. So the injuries that they have listed in this article was that she has a broken nose, she has a injured disc in her back or like her neck area. So this is not like this is serious stuff right here. This is like a serious issue. This is not something that should be condoned. This is a very heinous crime. Like and I feel that this has been swept under the rug. He was charged back then. No press about it. It wasn't on ESPN. Wasn't on the ticker. Nobody talked about it. He fought again, and we just heard about we didn't even hear about this when it happened. We just heard about it before his second fight with Alvarez, which was like 2 weeks ago. So we're just hearing about this. So this is they didn't even
Yep.
Yeah, we gotta talk about this.
Well, what's interesting about this, even another layer of this, as boxers, I think their hands are licensed to kill. Right. I think you when you are a combat sport person like that, I believe that used to be the designation in the state when you're at a certain level. So like assault with a deadly weapon or something like that. So, yeah, because you're trained to understand how to hurt people with your hands. And besides all the issues we talked about yesterday, in terms of what's we all should be discussing, concerned about the role of this abuse, particularly with these male athletes coming out of these sports where there's a lot of aggressive and violence, taking it outside of that space, particularly with women. But these guys have also been engaged with other men in violent, how that aggression is being played out in this space, and how we as a society accept it, particularly in the combat sports space, that we react in other spaces. And so I was surprised when you brought this to my attention. I'm surprised that it wasn't part of a common, that people weren't talking about that as an illegal issue. And, the fact that this woman has a broken nose, you're talking about powerful people like Kovalev, and there doesn't appear to be any recourse, right? The boxing commissions aren't investigating, right? They investigate a whole bunch of stuff inside the ring and everything else, but that's not part of their investigative scope. So who monitors that when you have all these different bodies responsible for this or not responsible for it? Because usually it's like in the NFL, as much as we are critical, the league has a responsibility somewhat. That's what we hold it. But in boxing, who's responsible? Because so many people are, there's so many people in the administrative apparatus of boxing where nobody really owns it, right? So who do you go talk to? UFC, you know who to go. UFC, you know who to go talk to, right?
Yeah, Dana White.
You know who to deal with when those issues happen. But who does that in boxing?
But it's real. Yep.
Those are the kind of things we have to really understand about how this gets addressed in that sport. Yeah,
it's real fishy, man. Because you see, when guys get in trouble, like a Marcus Brown, like a Adrian Broner, like a Gervonta Davis, when people get in trouble outside of the ring that seem to have different skin colors, you know what I'm saying? They don't necessarily have the complexion for the protection. It seems like they are front and center. Like it happens, when something happens, rightfully so. Like domestic violence is a very serious issue. I take it serious. I know you take it serious. It's a very serious issue. But it seems like when different guys like Sergey Kovalev, it's not talked about. When guys like Josh Brown, remember Josh Brown, the kicker for the Giants, he was able to play almost a whole season without anybody saying anything about it. Yep. But so it seems like there's a little double standard. But we're gonna move on to a guy we talked about a little earlier. His name is Floyd Mayweather, and
money.
This is Black History Month, ladies and gentlemen. This is Black History Month. And Gucci, if you did not know, they released this clothing line, I think, or like a hoodie or something that had a blackface picture or something like on it. And this is something that has obviously caused an outrage in our community because this is something we can't stand for and something we have to stand against. So in social media, the kind of like communities, like the black community as a whole, not as a whole, but majority of folks have placed kind of like a boycott of the Gucci stores and the Gucci apparel and stuff like that. And guess who, front and center, this is very predictable. I joked the day before this came out. I joked to somebody else. I was like, I bet Floyd Mayweather would do something stupid like make a video and go in the Gucci store. And the next day he does it. He goes in. He was like, I don't care about no Gucci boycott. I'm gonna go in and buy a whole bunch of Gucci stuff. He comes out with his entourage with like 5 or 6 bags full of Gucci supplies, apparel, all kind of stuff. Man, he's over here cooning and buffooning. I can't do it.
It is like, Floyd, you can have your own line. Like, you don't need Gucci.
He does have his own line. I don't.
That's what I'm saying. So go buy your own line, but or go buy Sean John, or go buy There's plenty of lines. Off-White, support my boy from UW Madison. Off-White, go. There's a whole bunch of lines that you can go and why you got to be up here in Gucci. So it's just the wrong move for a cat. For the most part, when it comes to the business, usually makes the right move, right? And other things he does, he's got his own issues. We talk about some issues we talked about, but he usually makes the right business decisions. And this one just seemed very Kanye-ish. So I can
they're very
everybody going one way, he going the other. It felt very Kanye-ish. That's the new term right now, isn't it?
That's a very accurate statement in my opinion because they seem a lot alike when it comes to these kind of decisions. Because Floyd, this is not the first time Floyd Mayweather has deliberately gone against the community. Like when I don't think it was Trayvon Martin. I think it was Michael Brown. When Michael Brown was shot and murdered, and the black. This is when the birth of the Black Lives Matter movement. He was one of the first people coming out saying, "Oh, I'm not for Black Lives Matter. I'm for all lives matter." This is the kind of guy that said that. This is the same kind of guy that came out when our president, number 45, came out and said, made the comments about grabbing a woman by her private parts. And he was the first one he was not the first one, but he was one piggybacking talking about, that's locker room talk. That's how real men talk. A lot of you guys, I know you and Hank, you guys know that Floyd Mayweather growing up was my favorite fighter inside of the ring. But I often tell you guys, he's my favorite fighter in the ring, but outside of the ring, it's not him. It's Andre Ward, and I do not respect Floyd Mayweather in his decisions that he makes outside of the sport of boxing. And this guy has been a disgrace to the black community, especially in Black History Month, when we should be reflecting and kind of like respecting like our black heritage and like the people that came before us and stuff like that. And the decisions he makes is disappointing.
Here, youngin. You said all it needs to be said. You blessed that, put it on, and let's move on. Your words are what we need to listen to.
All right. Well, okay. Now we're gonna go and talk about some heavyweights now. So it's not
the big boys are coming to town.
The big boy. It's not necessarily official just yet, but it's the talks are coming in motion. Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, Part 2. It's talked about for the fights. It's probably gonna happen in May. And it's going to be a big fight. It's going to be a very big event. Me and you might be there. It's going to.
Yeah, we're looking into it.
We're talking about May 18th, which is my birthday. And if I get, I'll probably save up. Even if we don't get credentials, I might end up just going just to be going. I might just go to that fight just because. But
y'all could support us by going to Patreon.
Oh,
in / RSG Live. Support a brother. Help us out on his birthday if y'all seeing this. Support the cause. We the underground. We want to be in the house, but we can only do it if y'all help us out.
Who do you believe is gonna come out and become victorious in this rematch?
Wow, man, this is that's because Tyson getting off that mat like he was the Undertaker was something else. I think Wilder's gonna get him. I think what happened was Wilder waited too long to put that pressure on him, and I think he finally had to get into a position where he needed to do it. I think it's gonna be a great fight. But I think Wilder is going to find him. Now that he kind of was able to time and see him, I think he's going to find him sooner. And he knows that if he finds him, he can put him to sleep. But that's easier said than done. But I think this time when he hit him, he don't Undertaker. He just under.
Yeah, in my opinion, usually in rematches and rematch situations, I usually go with the boxer over the puncher because usually they have more adjustments to go to. But this fight is very interesting because we saw in the first fight the boxer, which is Tyson Fury, he had a very dominant first half, not first half, but more like the middle rounds of the fight, where he was able to confuse and thwart the offense of one Deontay Wilder. But also, we saw adjustments that were made in the fight with Deontay Wilder. He was able to time him. He was able to figure out what combinations and such were going to work and land. But one thing for Deontay Wilder in the second fight, he has to go to the body. He has to be consistent going to the body because we know Tyson Fury is a tall man. He's 6'9", very rangy, and he can move. He can box. He punches on the move. He has good head movement. But one thing that doesn't move is the body. And
that's right.
Yeah, if he can be consistent, I saw he landed some good body shots in the first fight, but if he can be consistent going to the body, he's going to wear Tyson Fury down, and eventually I believe he will be able to knock him out in the latter portion of the rematch. But also, we have we have an announcement to make. Anthony Joshua, Big Baby Miller in Brooklyn, the hometown of Jarrell.
Baby.
That fight is official now. It's what do you think?
Well, I think it'll be an interesting fight. I mean, it's really about Big Baby finding Joshua. One thing we do know about Joshua is he's been knocked down. You catch him. The other thing you know about him, he's got heart. He gets up and he puts his punches together. I think it's going to be hard to tell because this is his first time on U.S. soil, and he's been so comfortable having the home, kind of the home court, doing everything in the O2. A lot of it's going to come down to how he handles promotional activities in the state and what it means to be in the States. It's even though he's been in big arenas, there's a different feeling when you're in a big fight in the United States. It's a different aura. People coming in, even though it's coming probably less people than he's fought in front of. The nature of that crowd, from Jay-Z being in the front row to, the way that the marketing comes, who's who being in the building takes on a whole new life to it. In kind of, the big fella's home area, you know what I'm saying? And it's how he handles that transition. He's got a big personality, but he's still got to be a little nervous that he's coming into this space. But, I think Anthony Joshua will win, but this is one of them upsets. It feels like a Rockman. Remember? It feels like a Rockman against Lennox Lewis, kind of scenario. You know what I'm saying? I'm just going to put it like that, where it was clear that Lennox should have won, but Rockman caught him and won. And then there might be a rematch with them where Lennox had to put Rockman to sleep. We might have a scenario like that.
That's an interesting take because, in my opinion, it's not going to be hard to find Joshua. Joshua's there to be found, but the problem is, do you want to find Joshua? Because when you find Joshua, you're going to like what you find. Yeah. Because Joshua has a very strong uppercut.
The uppercut is crazy.
Oh yeah, he almost took Vladimir Klitschko's head off with that.
Yeah.
And Jarrell Miller, he's a pressure fighter for a man that's above 300 pounds. He's about He comes into the ring about 315, 320 in his last couple fights. But for a guy that's that big, he has very good stamina. He doesn't get tired. He continues to come forward and throw punches. And that could be interesting to see how Joshua will deal with that. But in my opinion, he's just going to be running into a lot of shots. He's going to be running into a lot of power. And I think by the 6th or 7th round, Big Baby Miller's going to be out of there.
That's what I'm thinking. It's going to be a late one, but
yeah,
that's one of them Rockman situations. Don't be surprised.
Yeah, that's my opinion, but I could see. Well, I don't know if I could see Jarrell Miller winning this fight, but at the same time, you can't. It's boxing; anything can happen. But I'm looking for something. But Joshua, like I said, his power shots, like he's like it's interesting to see how Joshua's going to deal with Jarrell because Jarrell is going to be the first fighter that I would think is actually going to be stronger than Anthony Joshua. So what would happen if he can't necessarily use his strength? So that could be an interesting matchup.
Well, I think the key is how he uses his jab and the combinations to then set up things like to take the angles. Because like you said, with Big Baby coming forward, can he change the angles and hit him, and get him moving and get the angles that he wants and change the angles on his shots, which I think he can do. I think that's the part, his jab, moving. I think all those things are going to be very important in this fight to take him out with the shot he doesn't see. That's the thing that AJ can do. AJ can take you out the shot you don't see because he throws punches like he's a middleweight. So he can take you out with those shots you don't see. And that's what you're hoping for with somebody who's a pressure fighter, to get him to come into a punch. By coming forward, he's going to amplify the power because he didn't see that shot.
Right. That's interesting because this is going to be a big step up for Big Baby Miller because he hasn't really fought anybody of the caliber of Anthony Joshua. You look at his former opponents. You see guys like Johan Duhaupas. You see guys like Thomas Adamek. Like, oh my! God. So, I remember when Thomas Adamek was on the video game Fight Night round 4, Fight Night round 3. That was like 15 years ago. Like, how old is Thomas Adamek? I just thought about that. He had to be at least 45. Like, I don't understand why he's fighting people that old. And his last fight against Dinu or something like that, I understand it was a stay busy fight, but this is a guy just like the guy Alberto Machado just fought. This guy, he's not a full-time boxer. He works as like a security guard or something like that.
This fits into your comments about how you build a fighter and get them ready for each level. Is he getting to a level too soon? With a fighter that if you gave him 1 or 2 fights, if he's like 2 fights away from fighting Joshua, why don't you take the time? Don't have fools go on the money if you want to be there. If you get him a next level fight just below Joshua, 2 fights with talent just below Joshua, how does that prepare him for fighting Joshua? Is he jumping two levels? And do you want a fighter jumping 2 levels? And I think this is a prime example of a fighter that could be dangerous if you brought him along the right way.
But you got to realize who both their promoters are. Their promoters are the same guy, Eddie Hearn. Yes. You remember who Eddie Hearn is, the exact same guy back in 2015, 2016, around there, where Jesse Vargas was the WBO champion at welterweight, and Kell Brook was the IBF champion, and they were supposed to fight. But there's a difference of overpay. There's a difference overpay. Like they didn't want to pay what Jesse Vargas and Top Rank were looking for. So he ended up taking Kell Brook ended up taking Kell Brook to the UK to fight Triple G at middleweight. Ruined his fighter. Never been the same since. He fought him. He jumped 2 weight classes from Kell Brook fighting at 147, beat Sean Porter, going up to middleweight to eventually get. He was doing very well in that fight with Triple G. He ended up pretty much getting ruined. So like this guy Eddie Hearn, he's out for I don't know how much he necessarily cares about his fighters because he has both Anthony Joshua and Jarrell Miller, but I believe Jarrell Miller is a sacrificial lamb in his his
as Shaq would say, he barbecue chicken.
Oh yeah, he's barbecue chicken. Exactly what I was saying. But that's exactly right. But I believe he's the sacrificial lamb because this is AJ's first fight in the U.S. Right? So
Yeah.
he wants a big like a big showing for AJ in front of the U.S. market to tout him as this big as a star
And
coming from
Miller's from New York, right?
the fight. Yeah, it's in New York.
And Miller's from New York. Yeah.
Exactly.
Is he
So
from like Brooklyn?
Danny Jacobs and all of them are going to be up there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be an event. But yeah, now we're talking through it. I don't see Jarrell Miller doing
Nah,
pulling this
now you
out.
got to be
I don't
convinced now. This
I don't
sacrificial
see
lamb. He might
I
be out
don't
there in
see
like
this
4 or
coming out
5.
well for him, man. But I believe that's all the topics for us for today. We're gonna sign off. I'm gonna pass to Devon.
Hey, man, the youngin did it again, man. Thank you. Hey, make sure y'all catch us on realsportsguys.com. You can catch us on Blog Talk Radio, Real Sports Guys there, on all our social media. And, if you want to support us, help this young brother get to the boxing match on his birthday, you can go to patreon.com/RSG Live. And it's a place where you can support underground artists as they are building their businesses. And we're definitely underground. If you want to support us there, we appreciate anything that you can contribute. Till next time.